let's dive into Cersei. Okay, so this is like where things like I mean, she's such a like huge player. So ultimately, like we know she does her walk of shame. That's like the big moment. She's still dealing with the Kettle Blacks. They're still there. Lady Diana, right? Cersei's going through like a lot of emotional sort of stuff going on with all of this. And she's introduced to her new Kingsguard champion, Robert Strong. And then so finally, Cersei dines with Tommen's regent, her uncle Kevin, who has been trying to repair the damage Cersei has done. She requests that Lady Diana Merryweather attend again. Her innocence is proved. Although Kevin has no news of Jaime, Cersei seems certain of his safety, believing she would know if he were dead. Later that evening, Varys has Kevin and Pycelle murdered to keep the realm in chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a crazy, I mean, just, Cersei is let loose here. I did something, when was this? Just the other day on the whole Merryweather situation. Matt,
right.
you and I were talking about that.
Yes.
And the company that Cersei keeps, I don't know if maybe I'm wrong about this, but it does seem like, that they might turn on her, or that there's something else going on. There's a great theory that I never even knew about, and I'm not going to go in detail on it, but that, how do you say her name? Is it Taina?
Taina,
Taina, yeah.
Just roll with it. He probably says it 5 different ways in the audiobook, so it's fine.
Yeah, I have no idea. So anyway, she's the one who's like sleeping with Cersei, and really kind of just close to her, but she never brings her child, Russell Merryweather. She never brings him or whatever. And I stumbled across that awesome theory that maybe it was a Robert bastard, that maybe he's a Robert bastard. And somebody went all the way back into, there's a reason why she wouldn't want, the seed is strong and wouldn't want to see him, and that we might see him later. This is what George does, right? It's very odd that numerous times she refuses to bring the child. Why? And it seems like, is it Orton, her husband, possibly gay, and wasn't, so there's all sorts of crazy stuff with the people who are around Cersei also being, where they bought, do they work for Littlefinger, like the Kettle Blacks at one point? Do they work for the Tyrells, Varys? I feel that's the other piece that's kind of hard to sift out, is who was working for who around Cersei, who's actually loyal to her. And really, they want to put family first. And that seems like the smartest thing that the Lannisters could do, which is to trust only their family. But then the way they treated Tyrion was so awful that it's ironic that he ends up being a part of their great undoing, if you will. So yeah, I don't know, just some random thoughts on Cersei. But yeah, Nikki, what are your thoughts about, like, just I don't know, maybe the people around her, or I know you kind of said that.
I think one of the big parts of Cersei's undoing is her refusal to pay off the Iron Bank debts. Because they just turn on the entirety of Westeros and say, right, no more debts. Everyone needs to pay up now, and everyone is suffering as a result of it. So I can imagine it doesn't matter who you are, or what your titles are, etc. It's the Iron Bank who calls the shots. So I think there's going to be a lot of hate for her. Anyone who might have once been an ally, who's suffering as a result of that. I think it's all a bit up in the air. I think that was such a bad move from her. It's gold at the end of the day. Everything comes down to gold. So any allies she thought she might have had, it depends how they've done as a result of her actions with that. I do think it is sort of heavily implied that everyone around her is just telling her what she wants to hear anyway. So I can't really think, now that there's not going to be a Kevin, I cannot really think of anyone, perhaps Jaime, who's really going to be on her side for the right reasons because they care about her.
Yeah, the other person that's interesting, she has Sir Robert Strong, right? He's right.
Yes.
Qyburn.
And
Yeah,
I'm gonna talk. Well, I'm gonna talk more about Sir Robert Strong because I'll dive into the text. But yeah, go ahead. I didn't know if you were gonna dive into him or not.
Oh no, I just was saying like that.
Oh,
You're looking
sorry.
for allies around him, looking for or her, sorry, around Cersei, and trying to figure out like who are those people that she could still would go to and confide in, because the Merryweathers like fled, and there was this idea of bringing them back perhaps by Kevin, but they're gone. That looks suspicious, so as close as they were to her, it was all an information grab and all plotting to kind of, imprison or get Cersei in trouble with the Faith. I mean, there's a double cross going on there. So yeah, I think she has to look for her allies, and we're trying to figure out like who is that. And I think what the show did, again, hate to say this, but they kind of it's the full on throw your armor on. Like it was a visually representative, like she almost has like she's armored up in the sense that she's not letting anybody in. No one's coming into her bedchamber. She's not making marriage alliances. She's not doing that. So she's going to really harden up, I feel like. And that's something that even to the point where even Jaime couldn't maybe break through that if he did come back. So that's kind of where we're at. I mean, she's doing stuff. I like to bring up these little houses sometimes. House Stokeworth, right? So you had Lully's, you had Sir Bronn who's going over there. She's got this whole plot with Falsey Stokeworth to like kill Bronn and do different stuff there. So yeah, like who's going to inherit? Because the big piece with Nikki said the bank, the Iron Bank is not backing them. They can't buy the food that they need. The people will turn on Cersei, and this is what Tyrion sort of realized is that's why you needed House Rosby and you needed the Stokeworth family, those surrounding houses. Like George is really good at making it realistic, and that like we need their harvest, we need food and resources and things like that, and that plays into this. It's something that makes it a lot more believable and more politically kind of stirring, I guess. So yeah, I just think it's interesting to keep an eye on all of those little houses that are people that she might turn to or that have turned against her because she's plotting to kill Bronn and the likes of, like she's distancing her. She like allies that she could have had. They're not following. They're not winning, or she's done something, and then whoever takes their place is like not a fan of Cersei's. So
yeah, as it's so perfect that you bring that up because this is the point I was going to dive into. So let me dive into the text here. So first of all, this chapter, by the way, and just re-looking over it, is where George R.R. Martin shows to everyone that he is like an absolute god when it comes to writing, because it's insane. So the chapter, Cersei's final chapter of A Dance with Dragons starts, and she's like on the last night of her imprisonment. This is the like walk of shame, everything. She's going to all have guards. They'll keep the crowds away. No one will be allowed to touch me. The High Sparrow had promised me as much. Even though then she's afraid, right? And she's beginning to pace her cell, restless as the caged lions that lived in the bowels of Casterly Rock when she was a girl, the legacy of her grandfather's time. She and Jaime used to dare each other to climb into the cage, right? But the whole point is she's thinking all of these things. I'll have guards. They'll protect me. No one's going to like hurt me. And then she's thinking about like lions and like, being a Lannister and all of this stuff. Well, she goes on the walk of shame. It obviously goes a different direction than she thinks. And she's humiliated. And it's just like, terrible event for her. Justified, maybe, but, terrible, like terrible event. However you want to view it. And then at the very end, the way this chapter ends is after she's done this entire thing is, no, her savior was real, 8 feet tall or maybe taller. And it's Robert Strong, this monster character that came from Qyburn, right? But still in a way, sort of her design is now like her number one ally is this like monstrous creature who's like, probably bound through some sort of weird, like blood magic science, whatever, to Cersei is her like number one ally after she starts the chapter thinking like, I still live in this world where I'm the queen and everyone has to bow to me. And then she's forced to face reality that no, you're human just like everyone else. And now after going through all of that, and she's probably like hateful and angry and going through every emotion imaginable, she's given, Robert Strong. It's like, okay, I know what I'm going to do now. Everyone who's ever wronged me, like, get ready.
Yeah.
Get ready. Like this, yeah. So I mean, it's full on Mad Queen is probably like what's coming next.
Isn't
Nikki,
Robert controlled by Qyburn? Or that sort of directed? Because the Qyburn's an interesting one because he seems to be very, very open to Cersei's madness. And I wonder if that's just simply because she's the only one who's allowed him to do it. And if that suddenly stops for whatever reason, how quickly would he be to turn on her? If that kind of like makes sense. And I do wonder if he's the one in control of Robert Strong or sort of directing him. Is that going to go wrong for her at some point?
Yeah,
it could.
Another big thing with that, and that's a really good point, Nikki, like that people wonder where Qyburn came from and who is he loyal to, and like who is he maybe working for? Did he have him? I mean, is he just some wayward agent of, I don't know, like not chaos necessarily, but like what are his goals and his motivations? Is someone paying him? Is he working for someone? He's this disgraced maester who now is experimenting and doing all these crazy stuff. And we see him at a scary place in Harrenhal, right? And then he ends up, being there, helping out with Tywin's, when Shay is found and all that kind of stuff. So he's just there. She just sort of like brings him in. It's almost like one of the mistakes that I think she makes is she has so much mistrust of the people right in front of her, right around her, that if you're new and if you're in the back, she's, because that's what Qyburn really was. She like brings him in out of nowhere and just sort of like gets some loyalty pledges from him. And then he's with her. But where did that guy really come from? And is he really, how long is he going to, stay close to Cersei or power? Or because I think also he just wants to maybe do his thing. And if whoever he thinks is going to allow him to continue his experiments and do his work, right? Maybe he's going to.
I do wonder if it is as simple as that. But yeah, if it got to a point where, someone else said, "Oh, I can give you a much better laboratory. I can give you X, Y, and Z. All you've got to do is turn him on Cersei." Okay, fine. Could it be as straightforward as that with him? Because, like you say, where do his loyalties truly lie?
Yeah,
and you just don't know.
Right, we don't know. And another thing, the wordplay, the color association around Cersei is all from the get-go. And I truly believe this. Like, I know that there's these breadcrumbs that are laid in like a Clash of Kings, and then they pay off at the end of that book. But what George has shown, or what I believe he's doing, is that like we think we've seen the end of something, like a prophecy, or we've seen okay. Wildfire, right? Cersei has all of this. The green, the emerald, the black, all the different color wordplay around her suggests that she's into Wildfire and has some sort of connection with it, right? And it's like something that Tyrion then sort of takes and they use it to defend the city. But then later on in the show shows us that she's obsessed with it and she uses it as a tool later to destroy the Sept of Baelor. So if the Robert Strong situation doesn't work out, it's one of those things that like George could come back to that. Like, remember I told you I showed you in the beginning that she's used this tool before. When all else fails, when people around her, agents or whatever, fail, she became obsessed with this, and it's a tool that she might use to destroy, wreck the city, do something before young Griff comes in, like if the Tyrells are defeated or maybe something happens with her son. I mean, if the Sand Snakes do end up killing Myrcella or Myrcella kills herself, she could just say Dunzo and Wildfire this whole thing and be kind of done with it. So I don't think that's done. I think people think that her this whole Wildfire piece was over because it was over after the Battle of the Blackwater Bay. And Matt has found a lot of suggestions that like when George makes a connection that we think like sort of I don't know, the saddest sound is the bells. Right. Was the coolest thing I've ever heard. Like that Matt kind of figured out the idea that the ghost of Highheart was talking about the Red Wedding, and everyone says, well, the saddest sound was the little bells, the innocent who was killed that Catelyn kills. But then all along there's this other element that the saddest sound could also be the bells, the episode The Bells that was ringing when King's Landing was destroyed, and that George does that kind of stuff. Now, I mean, the show is the showism, right. But like, could he be doing more of that kind of stuff with the Lannister characters who have been around since the beginning?
Right. I guess I think a lot of times we view prophecies and we sort of think once one lines up with something like a lot of the stuff that Patchface says. It's like, okay, well, that he says at the beginning of like book 2, and then a lot of it could die directly into the Battle of the Blackwater. Well, I don't know. It could, but it could also reference something we haven't even seen yet. That like, and it's almost like George, who's like the master manipulator, is saying, oh, I actually set you up to think it was going to be this, but it's actually this other thing, like down the line, because that's what he does all the time. I mean, that's what he does. Like his entire arc is like, I'm going to set you up here, but nope, it's actually like a triple fake. He's like, got quadruple agents and everything like that. So yeah, so okay, so real quick, just one more thing here on Cersei, then we can move on. So as again, because like what you guys are saying here about this, I just wanted to this last little bit of the chapter 2, the final Cersei chapter, again, is as she's walking, right, she's thinking about all this stuff, and then it says, no, her savior was real, 8 feet tall or maybe taller, with legs as thick around as trees. He had a chest worthy of a plow horse and shoulders that would not disgrace an ox. His armor was plate steel, enameled white and bright as a maiden's hopes, and worn over gilded mail. Remember, this is all, everything that George sort of writes through a character's point of view is like incredibly important. She thinks she's dreaming, and then she herself is given a white cloak. Like Tommen names her, Tommen, her precious little boy, had named her a champion to the Kingsguard. So is she in a like a better place strategically after the Walk of Shame? Because she has to go through this terrible ordeal, and then she's given a white cloak as a champion of the Kingsguard, and she's given Robert Strong, who she views as like her savior. And then, as the line you say here too, I mean, this is just George doing it. Cersei never saw where Qyburn came from.
Yeah,
of course. I know. It's of course it's literally him. Just she didn't see where he walked out of this time, but nobody ever saw where he actually came
from. Matt, that okay. Sorry, Nikki. This is the kind of stuff that we like freak out about, right?
No, it's cool.
Right, Cersei never saw where Qyburn came from. None of us know where freaking Qyburn came from, and that's what I'm talking about, George. That's why I love this series, and it's freaking great, Well, let me ask Nikki a question too about this. Like, do you think, just a couple things, and you don't ever have to commit to anything, because I'm super non-committal. I'm sort of like, you know what, this could go any one direction, which is why I love reading multiple theories. I love theorists who, God bless them, they're willing to like lay down in writing, I believe it's going to happen this way, then this way, then this way, then this way. I'm not very good at doing that. I like to like think of 100 different ways it could go. But do you think that, a couple things, the Sept of Baelor, do you think Cersei will get to a point where she might use that? Because Matt said she's in this position where she has a champion, she's back protected, she will never let herself go probably near the faith again. Any thoughts on that? Like would we see something, or maybe not even that, but just something like it?
I don't think we're done with the Wildfire at all. She'll use that, I think.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the Sept of Baelor, I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if it went down that way, and I don't think it would feel out of character for her to do that. Yeah, it's just what steps she takes to sort of get to that decision. That's what I would be interested to see. But if it's not the Sept, it will be something else. She will 100% blow something up. She already did it with the Tower of the Hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not beneath her by any means.
Right. Yeah. And what is it true that wasn't she the one doesn't she originally kind of amassing the Wildfire? Is that right? In Clash of Kings, I think, because remember Tyrion figures out that Cersei that Cersei is doing that, and then he's like, okay, actually not a bad idea. Like, we could use that. She's crazily amassing Wildfire. That's like her. That's not like anyone else really coming up with that. So
isn't it? Does Lancel tell him? Doesn't he? Is it Lancel who's the one who tells him when he threatens Lancel, and he's like, "Oh, okay. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna have that," because he wants to wind her up, basically, and he'll make good use out of it. So yeah, it is Cersei who was gathering all of that for what reason we don't know, but yeah, just sort of a wild thing. You think like, did she have any strategy in how she was going to use that? Because it's Tyrion who comes up with the strategy. She had something else in mind, which I think is something she'll go back to later and say, you know what?
It's time to go back to plan A. And
yeah, because right now, I would say it feels like Cersei, because Cersei's final line is when she looks at Robert Strong, she says, "Yes, oh yes," is like the final, like her final line. Like, oh god, here we go. So, I think there's a few directions that she could go, because at this point, I'm pretty sure in the show Marcella's dead, right?
In the show,
she is in the show.
Yeah, in the show she's dead. Tommen is still alive, but Tommen's kind of intertwined with the faith, because she hasn't blown up the Sept of Baelor yet. So obviously, we can just dive into these two characters quickly, like Tommen and Marcella, because it kind of ties in ultimately to what's going to happen with Cersei. I'm kind of a believer in. I think that Robert Strong is going to go down in Clegane Bowl, which I think that the Hound is like the groundskeeper or whatever at the Gravedigger, and he's like at a monastery or whatever. And I think that like the faith could choose him as a champion, since he's like tied in maybe right now with the faith, and then we could have the Game Bowl happen earlier than it happens in the show, and maybe like they do have a trial by combat. If that were to happen and Cersei were to lose, then it could be like, okay, now Cersei has to go to the Sept of Baelor as her punishment. She could still blow it up, but some of that's going to depend on Marcella and Tommen. I think ultimately to where George would want this event to happen after this and this, because I don't think Tommen's jumping out of a window and killing himself at all. And Ez and I've talked about the possibility, man, it seems like Marcella, she's still so important, because she could like get further entwined with the Dorne. I mean, there's so many different angles that she could go in than her just getting killed, because they already maimed her. And so I think if George was going to kill her, he would have already done it. So I think the show is like, well, we just got to figure something out. So I mean, Nick, like, what do you kind of think of like Marcella and Tommen?
Tommen, I'm not sure, because isn't he like 8 or 9 years old?
Yeah, he's young
at this point in the books. Yeah, he's a baby. I really don't know, because he's so impressionable. Bless him. I don't really know where Tommen would go. I think going back to what you guys said earlier about maybe Jaime going back to King's Landing, I think it would depend on, like, I really like what you've just said about Cersei losing a trial by combat, because that just pushes her further into desperation, and she does stupid things when she's desperate. So would Jaime go and take Tommen out of King's Landing, knowing that something was going to happen? Marcella, I don't know, because was it Ariane Martell was planning to crown her and start a war?
Yeah. Yes.
So, because the Dornish plot is a bit up in the air now, because they've just learned that Aegon's alive and he's back in Storm's End. So I'm just kind of like branching out. It's really tough. I suppose it depends on sort of how. What's the word I'm looking for? How absorbed Marcella is with the Dornish, and with the Martells, because I think she's going to have to pick a side soon, definitely.
Yeah, and the one bit we were trying to think, this sucks that we try to do this, but we try to match like if there is a suicide among like Cersei's children, if it weren't Tommen, we were like, well, could it be Marcella, right, Matt? I mean, we kind of thought maybe.
Yeah, we talked about that once. The idea that maybe
like Prince Trystane, if he gets
killed, maybe like even Cersei has him killed or something, like, and then
that was a plan.
There was a plot already, to kill him. Yeah.
And so then she like really loves him, and then it's like Cersei. To me, that's more, especially book Cersei. I think she, like, Tommen is there, but it's really like her daughter is the one like that. You feel like there's like that's she really, when Tyrion sends her away, it's like she's so much more like bloodthirsty at him than she is in the show. I think she is in the show too. Yes. It's just we just don't get to see more of it as you do in the books. But the idea, I could see that going, because Tommen, I just don't see an 8-year-old kid jumping out of a window like to kill him. It just, I mean, I'm not saying he's gonna live. I think there's a lot of other ways to kill him, but I just don't see it being that way. And I think if you did flip it around, I could see Cersei going even that much more mad, where she thought she was doing the right thing for her daughter and her daughter killed herself. But again, her daughter could also be the younger and more beautiful queen that ultimately is the reason Cersei gets like taken out.
Yeah.
I like that.
Right. There's another bit too, just with this whole poisoning. So again, Myrcella in the show was poisoned, but Tommen right now is supposedly being poisoned. We don't know like he's a food taster. One of the Kingsguard members is tasting his food and looks like he's getting sick. So again, Varys, who knows what freaking is that him or is that someone else working from the shadows? You know, so the poisoning seems to be happening right now. An attempt, anyways, on Tommen. There's possibly a way in which Myrcella could commit suicide, and again, all of this stuff further just drives to the madness, maybe of Cersei, and as Nikki said, just being more desperate and wanting, grasping for straws, if you will. So, yeah.